Hey everybody, David here, and today I want to theorize on how the Sinister Six can be in Spider Man 3. Because if you haven't heard, there could possibly be a multiverse in the next Spider Man movie. That's right, we could be getting a live action version of Spider Man Into the Spider Verse. Not an exact copy of that animated film, but it's a variation of it because with Doctor Strange being added into this next Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland, and Jamie Foxx returning as Electro, possibly a new version of Electro. Some people are believing that it could be the same Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. How could that be? Well, I have a theory, and apparently there's also a rumor going around that previous Spider-Man villains could be returning in this movie as well, possibly forming the Sinister Six. So I have a theory on how each of these villains can return and which villains they might be. Considering, Kevin Feige likes to have a little fun with the comic books, just like if you go back and watch the original Avengers, it was kind of a accumulation of the very first Avengers comic book where Loki was the villain, with a little bit of the Ultimates Avengers, with the more modern setting where Shield brings them in and forms the Avengers. So there is a little bit of both of that. So I'm going to presume that if Kevin Feige is going to get inspiration from the comics, I think he's going to get the original Sinister Six villains that was organized in the comics, which was Doctor Octopus, Vulture, Electro, Mysterio, Sandman, and Kraven the Hunter. Now, out of all these villains, Kraven the Hunter was the only one that was not in the movies yet. None of the movies did him yet, and there was speculation that Kraven the Hunter would be introduced in this one. They could still do it that way, but I'm going to presume that if they're going to bring back previous villains from previous films, I'm going to presume that Kraven the Hunter will not be a villain in this one. I'm going to replace him with the Green Goblin instead. And I'll explain why when I get to them and which version of the Green Goblin I'm going with. So let's start off with the villain that we already know is going to be in this movie, Electro. How is Electro going to return? If we saw him last time in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, he evaporated into thin air, right? While he is electricity, let's remember that. And does electricity really die? I mean, if you shut off the power, yes, but I mean, if he evaporates, I mean, he's still energy, isn't he? Well, there's another character that kind of evaporated, and he actually went somewhere else, and it was because he shrunk. That's right. Ant-Man shrunk so small that he went into the quantum realm. What if, this is just a theory, what if Electro didn't really evaporate, period? What if he just turned whatever his energy, whatever you want to call it, he just went into the quantum realm accidentally and has been stuck there for years, learning his powers, seeing all these multiverses, and now he has fully comprehended the quantum realm, especially maybe even seeing how the Avengers used it to travel through different time periods and multiverses and such. Maybe he's been learning from a lot of those guys and said, you know what, maybe I can master this now and use this to my advantage. And that is how Electro is going to come back. And that's how he's going to regroup get some of these villains to join him. He's going to have to go to some different time periods or multiverses or whatever and grab some of these villains out to join him to destroy Spider-Man. Maybe not just one Spider-Man, maybe all the Spider-Mans he wants to kill. So my theory is that that's how Electro is going to return and factor into this, if it turns out to be true that he is the Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, there's some other villains, right? So let me get the Green Goblin out of the way, because the Green Goblin is the only one that wasn't part of the original Sinister Six team from the comics, according to Wikipedia here. So it was Kraven the Hunter. So let's go with Green Goblin. Which Green Goblin do I think is going to come back? I would prefer William Dafoe, but I think or even James Franco. But I think it's going to be Dane DeHaan because he's the only one that didn't physically die. And there's, the other two, we saw them get stabbed. We saw them be put to rest. Unless there's an antidote or a scientist who can bring people back from the dead. I guess Doctor Strange can do that. But I don't know why he would bring villains back. Even though James Franco wasn't really a villain by the end. He kind of helped Tobey Maguire. But anyways, they're stabbed, they're dead, they're in the ground, they're done. Dane DeHaan is the one that's still living and breathing and still wants revenge on Spider-Man. And I do think that if you bring any other villain from The Amazing Spider-Man back, he's the easiest one to bring back. Rhino too, but I don't think a lot of people want to see Rhino back. Because as much as Paul Giamatti is a great actor, his version of the Rhino was not that great. But yes, Dane DeHaan as the Green Goblin. I actually liked his version of the Green Goblin. I thought he was really creepy, and I didn't mind it. I know some people were mixed on it. I think they were more hateful towards the movie itself, but I think his performance, some people were mixed on it, I know. But me, I enjoyed it, and I wouldn't mind him coming back as that version of the character again. Maybe they could redo it a little bit, but since time has passed. But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing it. Now let's get to some of these other villains that are part of the team. Let's get to Mysterio, because Mysterio we've seen in the last movie. There's already been lots of theories going around since Far From Home came out in theaters that a lot of people believe that Mysterio is not really dead, that he faked his own death. And I agree with those theories. I mean, he's the master of illusion. Why wouldn't he still be alive? And how did he know that he was going to... I mean, I guess it was a contingency plan, right? But I think he's still alive. I agree with people on that one. So there we go. What about Vulture? Can Vulture return? Easily. Of course he can. I mean, we saw Michael Keaton in the trailer for the Morbius movie, which come on, it's going to be connected. Some people want to deny it all they want. But he's wearing the same uniform the prison uniform that he did in Spider-Man Homecoming. He's clearly playing the same character in the movies. You don't have Michael Keaton dressed up as in the same uniform from one movie and then put him in this one, another Spider-Man related character, and say he's playing a different character, but in the same clothing. No, he is going to be playing the Vulture again. And seeing him in Morbius might remind us, hey, this movie is still happening. What about... let's go to Sandman next. Sandman is an interesting one because he also survived. But the way he ended as a good guy, right? He's like, I'm good now. I'm sorry for killing your uncle. And he left off. He turned into dust and went away. Presumably he's with his daughter again. Maybe. Did he win the custody rights? Maybe not. So maybe he's a little bitter, wants revenge, and now he's turning to the dark side. I think that would be kind of weird to just turn him bad all of a sudden and say, I'm a villain now. But I mean, I could see them doing that. Like, don't worry about continuity too much. But to maintain continuity, I could see maybe Electro twisting his arm and saying, hey, if you don't work for me, I'm going to kill your daughter. And that's what could persuade Sandman to forcefully go with the villains. And then maybe at the end, obviously, Tobey Maguire says, don't worry, man, I know you're a good guy. So maybe that's actually the key to break that team apart. Who knows? So I think Sandman's pretty easy to bring back if you want to bring him back. And then finally, there's Doc Ock. Now, he's a very similar case, in my opinion, not to William Dafoe's Green Goblin, but I think he's more similar to Electro, where it seemed like he died, but I think you can find a way. A really good writer, I think, can find a way to bring him back easily. And I've always thought this ever since Spider-Man 2 ended, and thought if eventually down the road they wanted to do the Sinister Six, I always thought they could always still bring him back. And the last time we see him in Spider-Man 2, he was drowning underwater, right? The that thing that he built with the sun, or what the radiation, fell into the ocean and took him down with it. Well, he could have easily gotten out of that. And how come we haven't heard about him for years? Well, maybe he washed up to shore, but his memory got wiped out. Similar to like Matt Damon in The Bourne Identity. You know, in those movies, his mind was wiped because of some tragic event, and he didn't remember who he was or where he came from. That's a possibility. And maybe the arms or maybe his mind is dead and his arms have now taken over fully of his body. Because remember the machine, the arms, the mechanical arms, they had a mind of their own. Maybe they took over his dead mind now, and now they're fully in control of his body, and now he's just pure evil. That's one way. Now, there's another way they can bring all these villains together easily, and I think Avengers Endgame showed us how they could do this. They can travel to moments before all these villains died and pluck them out from their timelines. Similar to how the Avengers took those Infinity Stones from certain moments in time. I can easily see them doing something like that. Maybe Electro is still the one that does that. He's the one that goes to all those different time periods and plucks out all those different villains and says, come on, guys, we're going to go kill some Spider-Man. And then that's how they all come together. The only problem with that, though, is especially for the older characters, like Alfred Molina, I'm sure looks a little bit more different than he did back in 2004, because that was over 10 years ago. That was like over 15, 16, maybe 17 years ago. I think it was 16 years ago. Yeah, they're going to have to de-age him a little bit, right? Same thing with Thomas Hayden Church. They're gonna, as Sandman, they're gonna have to de-age him a little bit because he already looked pretty old in that movie. So I don't know. But I'm going to think that these are all theories. There's many different ways. I like the theories that I came up with. And look, guys, that's it. That's how I think the Sinister Six is going to come back. Tell me, what are your thoughts? Do you think there are better ways to bring those characters back? Or do you think they should just, you know what, bring those actors back, but have them play different versions of those characters? That way you don't have to worry about continuity and how they come back and all that. Or maybe they are the same versions. Would you want to see them all play some versions? Maybe there's characters that I picked that you think, you know what, maybe William Dafoe's Green Goblin is a better choice. Or maybe they should bring back Topher Grace as that version of Venom. Or maybe they should bring Tom Hardy in and have him be an anti-hero, you know, have him start off as a villain joining the Sinister Six in the Kraven the Hunter role. And then he's the one that teams up with Spider-Man at the end. There's many different things that they can do. Maybe Morbius is the sixth villain. Who knows? There's many different ways they can take this, and I'm super excited to see what they are cooking up. Maybe there is no other villains in this movie. Maybe Jamie Foxx is the only one. I think it would be weird to just bring back Jamie Foxx. If you're going to bring back one villain from one of the other movies and the same actor playing him, you might as well do it with the rest of them too. So, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways. With that being said, guys, I hope you like this video. Please comment below. I like seeing what other people say, even when I disagree with people sometimes. Everybody has a unique perspective and an opinion on these things, so just be respectful. And until next time, take care.